I-95 always backs up here. This is heading from the Fairfax County section of it into the Prince William County section. What happened is a lane disappears and the traffic backs up. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the traffic backs up. You're never safe from it. It's always a pain in the neck. But fortunately, it will not persist. It clears up south of the Occoquan. I-95 is being kind of a jerk today. Alright, it's about an hour and 15 minutes later. I-95 kind of sucked. Here we are at Chancellorsville. This is the Chancellorsville intersection. And my motorcycle is right over there. What I normally do when I'm at places like this, I read from the plaque. So I think I'll do that now. The Chancellorsville intersection. The intersection in front of you was the focal point of the Chancellorsville battlefield. From here, roads radiated in 5 directions. 4 of them are visible. The 5th, River Road, lies just beyond the trees to your left. From this intersection on May 1st, Union troops advanced eastward to your left in a failed attempt to get behind the Confederates at Fredericksburg. The Chancellor family's house dominated the intersection, which had become known as Chancellorsville. For 3 days, Union Commander Joseph Hooker directed his army from this building. But on May 3rd, victorious Confederates swarmed over this ground, pursuing Hooker and his defeated army as they retreated to a new line further north, leaving behind what had become one of the most famous intersections in America. It's a story I need to tell from my reenacting days, my Civil War reenacting days. On this month in August, back in 1985, which makes it 33 years ago, me and my unit, the 110th Pennsylvania, were camped near a grove of corn, a field of corn just like this. So we were all sitting under our dining fly, and that's a tent that you erect so that you dine under it. We were all sitting under it chatting one day, because it was a hot day, when my pal Mike Good from New Jersey went, "Shh!" And we said, "Why are you shushing us?" And he said, "The walls have ears," which I thought was really funny. I've never forgotten that. The other thing Mike Good used to do is whenever he walked into a porta potty, he would yell, "Hi Mom, I'm home." So in his memory, I do that whenever I walk into a porta potty. So that's just a blast from my past. Okay, what comes next is we're going to read from this plaque entitled Lee's Greatest Triumph. And if you hate Confederates, you may feel triggered at the next thing, so feel free to fast forward. As Union resistance around the Chancellor House dissolved, Robert E. Lee rode into the clearing behind his victorious battalions. Though badly outnumbered, Lee, in 3 days, had stopped the initial Union advance, brazenly split his own army to launch the most successful flank attack of the war, and on May 3rd, driven the Federals from their entrenched positions around Chancellorsville. The battle was perhaps the greatest of his career. Thousands of Confederate troops raised their hats and cheered when they saw Lee arrive near the Chancellor House. Wrote one staff officer, "It must have been from such a scene that men in ancient days rose to the dignity of gods." Robert E. Lee. This is all that remains of the Chancellor's house. And I'm going to read from another plaque. In 72 hours, the Chancellor family's world was turned upside down. A Union soldier described the Chancellor women on April 30th. Upon the upper porch was quite a bevy of ladies in light, dressy, attractive spring costumes. They were not at all abashed or intimidated, scolded audibly and reviled bitterly. They stated they had assurances from General Lee, who was just ahead, that he was there anxiously awaiting an opportunity to extend the hospitalities of the country. They had little conception of the terrors in store for them. 3 days later, Confederate artillery shells set fire to the Chancellor House, forcing Sue Chancellor and the other women to flee. The sight that met our eyes as we came out of the dim light of that basement room beggars description. The woods around the house were a sheet of fire. The air was filled with shot and shell. Horses were running, rearing, and screaming. The men, a mass of confusion, moaning, cursing, and praying. At last look, our old home was completely enveloped in flames. 14-year-old Sue Chancellor. During the Civil War, civilians had three options: cower, flee, or fight. Believe it or not, there was an instance of one civilian fighting. His name was Burns, and during the Battle of Gettysburg, he took up his old War of 1812 musket and fought alongside one of the Union regiments. I believe he was wounded, but hats off to the gallant old man. This is the Bullock Road, B-U-L-L-O-C-K, which also happens to be my son-in-law's surname. Gives you an idea of how pretty the woods are around the Chancellorsville Battlefield Visitors Center. It's important to note, however, that the Battle of the Wilderness, which took place here as well, was not this overgrown. It was a scrubby second growth forest, not at all this big and epic or green. I'm guessing it was a pretty crappy battlefield to look at before, and it certainly was after. Here's some more of the battlefield paths. Chancellorsville. Beautiful big green Virginia forests. Virginia is a very green state. This is a place, believe it or not, I don't think I've ever been. This is Hazel Grove. This large open plateau was the key to the Union position. Stonewall Jackson's flank attack the evening before had staggered the Union Army, but had not seriously damaged it. As the new day dawned, the Confederate Army found itself divided, with Hooker holding the high ground, Hazel Grove in between. Had Hooker strongly defended the plateau, he could have kept the Confederate Army separated and defeated it one piece at a time. But the Union leader had lost the will to fight. Before dawn, he ordered his groups to evacuate Hazel Grove and fall back towards Chancellorsville, forfeiting the most important position on the battlefield. The Hazel Grove clearing. This is the Catherine Furnace, built in 1837. It was closed in 1847, but it was reborn to meet the Confederacy's wartime need for iron. It was part of an iron producing facility. Let's read from here. Used many buildings, employed dozens of laborers. And there's the engine house, the furnace stack, which is what we're looking at. Anyway, they produced iron bars here, known as pigs, transported to a forge elsewhere, where skilled craftsmen fashioned them into pots, kettles, tools, and other useful items. 33 years ago, I went to church with a family that had a 14-year-old son named Charlie. Charlie was something of a problem. And his dad asked me, Charlie showed an interest in the Civil War, and his dad asked me if I would take him to see some Civil War sites. So I said sure. And Charlie and I traveled down to the Wilderness and Chancellorsville, where we are now. This was back when I had my 1975 Porsche 914. Well, we took the top off the Porsche and we were driving around these roads, and it was, my legs were so long and the Porsche was so small that I could actually steer and manipulate the car while sitting on top of the roof, the beam that served as protection rollover bar. And Charlie and I were driving along these roads 33 years ago, like a clown car in a Porsche, both of us sticking up over the Porsche. And I have a photograph of Charlie standing at the top of the Catherine Furnace. I wonder what happened to him. He's, well, let's see, he would be 47 now. How did he turn out? Here's another plaque I should read. A region of gloom. From the time of its earliest settlement, this region was known as the wilderness of Spotsylvania because of its dense thickets and poor soil. Locals called the countryside just west of the wilderness the poison fields. High concentrations of iron and other minerals, including gold, in the soil made for poor growing conditions. Scrawny trees dominated here. The iron industry rendered the landscape even more forbidding. The rich mineral content of the soil spawned mines and iron furnaces as early as 1718. Those furnaces, like the Catherine furnace in front of you, required vast amounts of charcoal, which in turn demanded that huge swaths of timber be cut for fuel. The cutting operations, which continued for decades, left behind a landscape engulfed by newly emerging pines, stunted oaks, vines, thorn bushes, and honeysuckle. A wilderness in the most forbidding sense of the word, wrote one officer. What's up ahead? Gravel. One of the reasons I wanted to come here was to try my motorcycling skills, develop them a little better by riding on gravel. By and large, motorcyclists don't like gravel. The footing is uncertain and slippery. Nevertheless, there are techniques that a proficient motorcyclist can use to ride on gravel. From what I understand, the trick is to minimize your lean angle. In other words, stay upright. Also, it's kind of like riding in the rain. You don't want to do anything sudden. Come to gradual stops, do gradual accelerations. The speed limit here is 20, and I plan to adhere to that. Let's see if I can make this trip without dropping my bike. Gravel. So far, so good. Haven't dropped the bike yet. It's not at all pleasant to ride on, however. Taking a street bike on the gravel. You dirt bike guys are probably laughing at me right now, but whatever. Hey, it's a challenge for me. Okay, back on pavement. Off the Jackson Trail. There's more of the Jackson Trail, but do I want to ride it? Nah, I don't think so. I've proven my point. Gravel's not a big deal if you just be cautious. And besides, I'm flipping crap up into my face. I think I have something in my eye. And I'm also wary of flipping stones and whatnot onto my bike. So, nah. I'm staying on the road. I'm at the intersection of the Brock and Orange Plank Roads, one of my favorite spots in Virginia. And I'm glad I got off that gravelly road because it covered my poor motorcycle in a fine coat of yeesh. Anyway, I don't want it scratching the paint finish or anything. I don't think I'd take a Harley on that road, but I'd take this poor Suzuki. Anyway, Brock and Orange Plank Road, one of my favorite spots, despite the fact that it seems to get a lot of traffic. And you know what? I can hear the lunch bell ringing, so time for me to find a place to have lunch. At the general's quarters. I want you to notice the restroom decoration on the walls. The Luger. It's a Second Amendment kind of place. Why am I stopping? Because because I saw this sign, Gaspard Totman. A mile south is the unmarked grave of Gaspard Totman, 1797 to 1880, a major in the Polish army who participated in the failed 1830 revolt against Russia. Exiled in 1837, he immigrated to the U.S. where he practiced law, wrote, and lectured. During the Civil War, he recruited the Polish Brigade, the 14th and 15th Louisiana Regiments of Jackson's Corps. A colonel in the Confederate Army, he sought unsuccessfully the rank of Brigadier General. Totman settled here in 1866 and served as the European agent for the Virginia Board of Immigration. All right. Gaspard Totman, we salute you. Back at my favorite intersection. Why? Because I'm taking the long way home. Why? Because that's what one does on a motorcycle in a beautiful place on a beautiful day. 2nd Corps, Army of the Potomac country, right here. Wahoo! Salem Church. Spotsylvania Baptists built this church in 1844 and named it Salem, a biblical word meaning peace. 2 decades later, Salem Church was engulfed by war. The Civil War wreaked havoc on Salem Church. Members returning in 1866 found blood-stained floors, bullet-scarred walls, and more than 100 bodies buried on the grounds. Undeterred, they refurbished the property and resumed worship services here. All right, before we leave the historic Salem Church and the American Civil War in this part of the country, I wanted to show you this monument to the 23rd Regiment New Jersey Volunteers. It was shown to me by a New Jersey guy, and the favorite thing about it is our Colonel E. Bird Grubb. How'd you like to have a name like that? E. Bird Grubb. Okay, time to go back home. Back at one of my favorite stops, Quantico Harley dealership. Ah! I hate you, I-95! Alright, it's 4:08. Today's ride was 131 miles. A little less than last week's. But it was still fun. Alas, the Friday riding excursion has come to an end. But it was great. So what did I learn today? Today I learned that traveling on freeways is a lot more pleasant with hearing protection. And I also learned that I can navigate on gravel if I have to. So that's what I learned. See you next time.